Today I'm going to show you how to put an AeroCrank together. The most important part I want to show is how the drag system actually functions and behave, and finally how to change the strength if you need to. During the process, I will specify those important parts. Okay, we're going to start building the drag system first. First of all, with the main shaft. Then of course we got different type of grease. This is the one I use the most. Make sure you know the number. Okay, you got PTFE in it. So a little bit, and then we put the thrust bearing into it to start with. Now, this is the thinner one. Okay, we want to make sure that we grease the thrust bearing. Now we want to use the PTFE, the true PTFE, like from DuPont. We needed this portion on the main drive shaft. And now we put in the bushing system because of the pressure. Then we put the gear on. Now you can see it's pre-assembled with the bearing on it. Okay, now we're going to start stacking all the clutch and also the washers. First, we grease it all the way to the bottom. Graphite washers. And the square. Graphite washer. Of course, this is the friction type. Titanium washer, the dimple part. And then graphite washer. The square. Graphite washer. The friction type. The dimple type. And finally, the clutch top. It's squared, so you need to make sure you go right in. Okay, now with a little bit of this, we put this piece on. Now we put using the handle to secure the back, and we want to squeeze out all excess grease. Okay, then we just put them away. And then we'll wipe this thing clean with the paper towel. Okay, then we loosen this part. We use retaining compound, which is 10 thousandths, around the bearing groove. And then correctly slide the bearing in. See that? It's sitting in perfectly. Okay, now don't use retaining compound, we use thread lock on these 3 holes. This is red thread lock. And then using the thread lock 243 for this last hole, because this has to be removable. Then we put in all our studs, our titanium shoulder studs. That's what keeps the entire crank stable while you're putting in the handle. Then use a 1mm screwdriver. Now this is the one that actually controls the bearing. And this 3 is permanent. So the moment you screw it in, you should never be able to screw it out again. That's the reason we use Loctite Red on this. Okay, now screw it in the star drag so that it will maintain the entire drag system and never fall out until you want it to. Okay, now we put in our gasket. This is to provide a cushion space between the stock and this and the AeroCrank, because the stock is not 100% identical every time. You can see we pre-drilled it. It goes right on. Then we put the secondary piece on top of it. So there's 2 gaskets, 1 on each side. Original, we only use 1, but after January 2020, we decided to use 2. Okay, now on this side, which is the crank side, what you do is that you grease the gear, and then you put in the one-way bearing, okay? One-way bearing, go in and you're able to turn backwards, not forward, because it's a one-way bearing. Now you can lift this piece up and drop it in here, and then you just grease the surface to give him a little bit grease on the surface. And this part, we also grease front and back for this switch. And make sure you put the switch on the top side, otherwise it won't install. Okay, now we put the piece together from this point, and now make sure you never ever turn this thing forward. If you do, you're gonna absolutely ruin the spring in it. Okay, sometimes it comes up. That's the reason we now to redo this with bearing retainer, so that we put this thing back. It'll fall out my hand. Okay, make sure both sides are good. This side is good. This side is good. No gap. Now you want to be sure that everything is right. So flip this switch and see, go backwards. You cannot. So the one-way bearing is installed correctly. Now put thread lock glue on all 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you notice in the whole process, I have never touched this pole. No, I want to turn it, because if you turn it anywhere wrong, actually a 45-degree turn of that screw in the wrong way will ruin the spring. So it is critical when you're doing all this, you do not touch the pole or the star track. Okay, now it's time to thread the slab. See, the slab is right here. Now make sure it's facing this way. We're going to put the first one in now. See, very critical. You want to thread this thing in first, okay? Then you want to go to the slant side. There's 2 sides, a slant side and also a slop side. You want to go from the slant side in, and then you tie a knot. You want to make the knot small, but not too small. This is perfect size. And then you burn it. Now, if you don't burn it, I will tell you, this will come out. Now, the moment you finish it, tighten it, and make sure you sit inside that hole. See how nice it sits inside here? Now, flip that thing to the other side, and do the same thing to the other side too. Again, thread it through. Make a knot. Burn it. Now this is where 90% of the people screwed up. They ruined the spring. He said they put the handle in. Okay, now look at that. I'm going to put the handle in. Make sure you never go forward. If you go forward even once, you ruin the spring. Then make sure the thing is flipped up and you go backward 32 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Now you hold your thumb right here. You put in this washer. This washer is prevent friction from that in the spool. Make sure, see that? The string is facing that on the slant side, down. And then you pull the string to hold it. Now you hold it with the thumb and you flip to the other side. You put in the spacer, okay? And then you put in the covers washer. And again, you make sure that it's on the right side. See that? There's 2 sides. One of the string is facing the backwards. Otherwise, it will cut it. Okay, after both sides are good, tighten the string. Now, very important, hold the string inside. Like that, hold them in. And let them ride in the middle of the spool. If you don't ride in the middle of the spool, it's not going to work. Okay, after you finish it, you don't use retainer compound. Make sure Loctite thread. You put a tiny drop right here. And use, there's 2 screws. This is GL5 and this is GL2 titanium screw. You can see they're different. The GL5 takes a T10. Now, do not tighten it. You want to snug it. The moment it touches, you stop. Otherwise, the spool will be tightened too much. Then you flip to the other side, same thing, a drop. And then using the T10. Okay, after both is done, you flip on this side, you cover it back. And this time use a T8. And then you put the 2 titanium GL2 screw up here for the, it's a retaining screw for the cover. Now before I cover this one, every one I build, I would date and sign every single aero crank. Today is 9/24, so I put 9/24/20, and then I'll sign it. So you know I'm the guy who is responsible for this specific aero crank. Then I put it right here. Okay, put those 2 screws in. And finally, put the aero crank handle in and tighten the star drag retaining screw using the single slot 1mm screwdriver. Now let's test it. Pull it out, let it go back in, pull it out, let it go back in, put down the anti-reverse. Now make sure the anti-reverse, see that? This is no good. You want to make sure it's covered, the red. See that? It won't come out. It loosen the drag. It can slowly come out. Which now makes sure everything is good. It's done now.